and welcome to the SportsPro Podcast. I am your host, Tom Bassam, joined this week by two of my esteemed colleagues in the editorial department. Would you introduce yourself?
Don't even get an introduction these days.
No, mate. Yeah. No, we're cutting costs and introductions are the first to go.
Fair enough. I did think you'd forgotten about us amid all the big interviews you've been securing recently. Did wonder if we'd get invited back on. But I'm Sam Carp, for people who don't recognise the voice.
Hi, I'm Steve McCaskill, and I'm the technology editor at SportsPro.
We've got some serious business to get to, and that serious business is Euro 2024. How, on a scale of 1 to pissing my pants excited, how excited are you both about the upcoming tournament?
It's always one of the highlights of the sporting calendar. It only happens every 2 years. It's basically back-to-back football, so I am overjoyed, basically. It's like Christmas for me.
It happens every 2 years. That's great for you, to be fair, to have a Euros every 2 years, too.
Major tournaments every 2 years.
Major men's tournaments every 2 years. Come on, fellas.
It's crept up a bit this year, I think. Like, I feel in particular the build-up to the last Euros was kind of... There was a lot of anticipation, obviously, because of the postponements, and it was kind of the biggest sporting event to happen post-COVID. Whereas this one, I think, does feel like it's come around a lot sooner, especially, I guess, after the 2022 World Cup in Qatar happening later. And yeah, I'm sure those who don't like football are dreading the fact that there's another major tournament happening this summer, but for the rest of us, bring it on. You
must be excited as well. So many Palace players in the England squad, Sam. Just so much shop window opportunities for bigger clubs.
Yeah, shop windows for bigger clubs. At the same time, yeah, I mean, the best part about it is, Tom, that as a Brighton fan, you're going to be cheering on 4 Palace players this summer. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to the most, I think.
Yeah, that's if they get in the team. Okay, right. We'll start, gents, with a bit of a fun round. In fact, I was going to try and make this whole podcast fun. I've compiled 6 statements. You're going to each take it in turns to tell me whether or not it's true or false. Steve, we're going to start with you. True or false, Hisense is the official VAR sponsor of Euro 2024.
That is true, as I relayed in my newsletter of the week.
It's almost like I wrote these questions specially.
Maybe you should start with me for that one.
Maybe. The VAR sponsor, I think that's got to be a first, doesn't it, for Euros?
I think it's definitely a new way to get visibility for Hisense being the TV partner. I'm hoping, for football's sake, there won't be too much time being spent in front of the monitor. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of cameras on there, lots of people watching quite intently for the referee's final decision. So it's a smart bit of marketing, really.
It's a first generally, isn't it? I don't know if anyone's ever sponsored VAR before. There was loads of talk when VAR first started being used about, the fact that it could be more commercial inventory to sell and there could be an opportunity for someone to sponsor it. But I feel like quite a lot of brands were put off because of the negative associations with VAR. So you do wonder if there is like a really bad decision that happens during the tournament, whether it actually have a negative impact for Hisense. But I guess that's a risk that they're taking and one they think's worth it.
I believe Crypto.com was maybe a VAR sponsor in Italy. But yeah, otherwise, I don't think there's been a lot of instances of happening. And you're probably right. It probably is a lot to do with like negative brand association. So yeah, good luck to Hisense. I don't know necessarily if this is the way to break through in the same way that Volkswagen did with the little mini cars dropping off the balls or anything like that, which has got to be my favourite sponsorship activation, I think, of the last 10 years. Sam Carp, Puma is sponsoring more teams than Adidas at this year's tournament. True or false?
That is false, for sure.
For sure. Yep, you are correct. Puma is sponsoring 4 teams. Adidas has 6. For the rest of the list, check out our wonderful 2024 commercial guide. But no surprises, the leader is in this category with 9. That's Nike. I was still surprised, actually, by that number for Puma. I mean, battle of the brands at these tournaments is always kind of keenly contested. Anything that you've noticed in that regard in the build-up to the tournament, Sam?
I think there's probably a couple of storylines just in the sense that I guess a couple of big deals have been done in the build-up. Obviously, the most well-covered one has been the DFB's decision to split from Adidas and move over to Nike, although obviously Germany will still be wearing Adidas kits at this tournament because that deal doesn't kick in until 2027. Nike also secured the French kit again recently amid reported competition from Adidas. So yeah, a couple of big wins for Nike recently, but yeah, Adidas does still supply the kits for a number of the big teams at the tournament, including Italy, I believe, is one of them. And obviously Germany, as I mentioned, they're also a global sponsor of the event, supplying the match ball. So they'll have plenty of visibility as well through that partnership.
After one round of true or false each, all square, one apiece, Steve McCaskill, Canal Plus will broadcast every game from Euro 2024 in France.
False.
False is correct. What's notable about this particular question?
Well, Canal Plus aren't showing any games. I think TF1 and M6 have, I think it's 25, 26 games on free-to-air. Only the last couple of days, beIN Sports have acquired all of the games from the tournament. It's a very last-minute deal. I think L'Equipe, when they reported it, just said, finally. So there's a lot of uncertainty going into that. It's not the first time this has happened going to a major tournament. I mean, the Women's World Cup, there was a bit of a standoff until the very last minute for various reasons that we talked about quite a lot at the time. But in the wider sense, there's a lot going on in the French broadcast market when you think that Ligue 1 still doesn't have a domestic TV deal for next season. So I've got a feeling that's also related, given how the dynamics have been going there. But most other countries have known where the games are going to be for quite some time now.
I also thought it was interesting, and maybe this is something that's happened for a while and it's just slipped under my radar, but in Germany, you've got a pay TV company which has got all of the games. In France, similarly. But I mean, obviously, they're still split with free-to-air broadcasters, and that kind of where that split lies is something that we talk about quite a lot. And Steve, I know you're pretty passionate about. Interesting that the Euros is kind of moving in that direction of increasing numbers of pay TV broadcasters, right?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to the individual country regulations. So in the UK, there's a list, the Crown Jewels list of which events must be available on free-to-air television, or whether that's live or highlights. In other countries, it could be the case that only the home team games are protected. So it could be that, you know, if you're, I don't know the full extent of the regulations in France, but it could be that all the French games must be on free-to-air TV, and then perhaps to make it a more attractive package, they bundled in some knockout games to make it appealing to everyone, and also to bump up the price as well. Because if you have to give something away to free TV, you might as well try and get more revenue from there, because that's obviously going to affect the competition. So it is interesting, because you would have thought that a governing body like UEFA or FIFA would want to get its tournament in as many homes in front of many eyeballs as possible, because that's kind of what makes a tournament special. It's also good for the commercial partners. But yeah, there's been a definite shift in the last couple of years. Maybe it's because television's not, although it gets huge audiences, it's not the only channel to reach fans.
Is this like a recent phenomenon in a way as well? Because UEFA obviously expanded the competition to 24 teams. There's probably, for some broadcasters, especially the free-to-air broadcasters, there's less games that are of interest to them, potentially. You'd mentioned there the sort of regulations in terms of how, but in a lot of countries, the fixtures are kind of ring-fenced and made sure that they are on public service broadcasters. But I do feel like, you know, since the tournament has expanded from 16 to 24 teams, there are a lot more kind of like inconsequential games, or just like games that people aren't generally as interested in. So I don't know if that's maybe played a part as well, and it's potentially opened it up for UEFA a little bit to do those deals with those pay TV broadcasters and bring more revenue into the fold.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, though, that approach. It's like, we're going to create more content for you, but actually it's less valuable. There's a lot more games that don't really mean very much, and we'll sell them, but we've realised that they're not as valuable, so we'll sell them to somewhere where it's not going to be as kind of, it's not going to be as important. I think that's one of the real shames about the expansion of this tournament from 16 teams. It used to be great. 16 teams, every single game mattered. And free-to-air broadcasters want to show every single game, whereas now, they're not even dead rubbers because 3 teams qualify from the group stages, but they're just, it is a lot of time spent getting rid of not very many teams.
I think it's something we might see in a few years' time in the US as well, North America. If you think about the group stages in Qatar, they were outstanding. I mean, really, really good drama. And that was because, if those teams go into 16, every match matters. Euro 2016, Portugal finished third in their group and won the whole tournament. So it's great that we get more countries involved, and that will also help increase rights and values in certain countries. And I think it's great to have new nations as part of the tournament, because 16 was a little bit limiting. I do understand that, but you're right. There's maybe one game per round that really matters for a lot of teams, and that you can always just sneak in through the third place.
Yeah, well, that's what England will be banking on, no doubt. Sam, your true or false statement for this round, and this is based on the UEFA website, so don't question me, question UEFA. 5 of this tournament sponsors are Chinese. True or false?
Does this include kind of like 2 brands that are potentially owned by the same company? Not potentially, are owned by the same
I have separated
company.
those 2 brands. They count as separate things.
I am going to say that it's true.
You are correct. Yeah, those 5 brands for people who are obsessed with these kind of things are AliExpress, Alipay, BYD, Hisense, and Vivo. I think that's the single largest number of brands from any given country in this year's list. Interesting, really. Like, I mean, it feels like it's gone under the radar a little bit.
Maybe a little bit, but I also don't think it's a hugely new trend. I think generally what the sponsorship portfolio for the Euros always tells you is that while it is a European football competition, brands definitely see it as a sports property with a global reach that helps them reach consumers in markets that they maybe otherwise wouldn't get to engage with. And Chinese brands in particular have recognised that. So Hisense, who we've already mentioned, they sponsored Euro 2020, as did Vivo, Alipay, AliExpress were also involved in the last Euros because that Alibaba deal was signed before that. I think it's worth more than $200 million. So quite a significant investment. I think sort of what's most interesting actually about this one is the new ones that are involved. So BYD in particular has been kind of ramping up its sponsorship activity over the past few months, basically ahead of kind of an expansion into Europe, basically with its European vehicles. I think basically they're seeing this tournament as a really good opportunity to build their brand awareness. There's quite a lot of conversation going on in the background at the moment around tariffs that are going to be introduced by the EU, because they believe like a lot of the Chinese companies kind of get heavy government subsidies, which means they can price their cars lower, and they're worried about kind of the impact that that's going to have on the European automotive market. So I think BYD coming in is really interesting, especially because when you consider the fact that the car sponsor of the last Euros was Volkswagen. Yeah, obviously the pride of Germany, really. And when the tournament is actually taking place in Germany, Volkswagen isn't going to be a sponsor of the event. So I think that's a really interesting one. Keep an eye on. Although it should also be said that Volkswagen will have visibility through its sponsorship with the DFB. So yeah, not a new trend, but I think...
No little cars though, and that's really...
Well, yeah, exactly. Do Volkswagen have a copyright on that little mini remote car? Can BYD slap its logo on it and deliver that match bill? That's what we're all going to be watching out for. But I think that's kind of one of the more interesting parts of the sponsorship portfolio this year.
Yeah, no, also to your point, I mean, on global brands, Visit Qatar being a sponsor of this, I find that fascinating, especially when you're in a country like Germany and they've got so many well-established big national brands like that. You could have had Lufthansa as that's like in that slot. I mean, you do have 3 German sponsors, I think, in this: Lidl, Engelbert Strauss, and Adidas. But yeah, I mean, it's, as you said, really illustrates the global nature of this tournament, despite the fact it's quite overtly European. All right, 2-2. I feel like I'm going to have to step up the difficulty on these a little bit. Steve McCaskill. True or false? All of the venues for this year's tournament also hosted matches during the 2006 World Cup.
I can tell you Dusseldorf didn't host matches at the 2006 World Cup.
Well, this guy, he's on fire today. You are correct. There's a couple of others as well whose names escape me and I've lost the webpage on, so we're going to have to move swiftly on from that conversation. But I did think that was interesting. There was some like Kaiserslautern hosted World Cup games and isn't involved in this tournament. But yeah, I mean, kind of otherwise, all the big stadia are there ready. It probably says a lot about just the fact that the difference, I think, to me in this tournament from maybe not the last Euros, where obviously all the games were played in pretty big stadiums, but in some of the tournaments we've seen recently where there have been things that are under construction or added. Playing in an established European soccer nation, maybe a bit more of a trademark for a Euros than a World Cup, but nonetheless, kind of reassuringly familiar stadiums for me.
Yeah, I think it also reflects, the Bundesliga and their, high average attendances. Most of these stadiums were also renovated or built for 2006, which in European terms is not a long time ago at all. Fairly decent geographic distribution. And yeah, it does sort of buck a trend where tournaments are used as opportunities to either renew or build new stadiums. I think in Portugal in 2004, I think it was all but one were built like a year before the tournament, and even that was fairly new. And then obviously, you're moving into, let's say, newer territories, so like Poland and Ukraine, there was a lot of stadium building for that tournament. France was a bit of a mix. There was, again, quite a few stadiums returning from 1998, but then Lyon and Bordeaux were new. So yeah, established footballing nation in terms of infrastructure, and also I guess as things like environmental impact and sustainability in terms of cost become more factors, it's just an interesting shift from other events of this size.
Interesting stat I saw, by the way, in terms of who's actually going to these games yesterday. So I can't remember who did the story, but it was from Viagogo data that the country where most tickets being bought from on that platform are the US.
Wow.
Which seems weird. There must be some sort of like...
Yeah, is that because it's a more of an American platform than there's other more locally popular ones? I mean, like the pricing of this has been... It's not... I think maybe this is part of the influence of Germany. It doesn't seem to me to have been outrageous when it comes to the I mean, there's obviously going to be very expensive top-end ticket prices, but yeah, it doesn't seem like UEFA have got carried away with charging lots and lots for tickets for this tournament.
Maybe that plays into the fact that, again, going back to the expansion of the tour, I don't know how it's differed. If I haven't actually looked at the ticket prices because I did not apply. But if you want to make sure that the stadiums are full, especially for some of those perhaps less attractive fixtures, getting that pricing strategy right is maybe another challenge that hosts and UEFA have to kind of approach together. So
far, every single true or false statement has been correctly called. Sam, this is to take it to the tiebreaker. True or false, Albania has a greater social media following than the Czech Republic?
Well, the last time I counted, higher than the Czech Republic. I am going to go with false.
In fact, true.
Oh, man.
According to SportsPro's very own data, which can obviously be unquestioned.
I don't know, I'd question it.
Yeah, the combined accounts for the Albanian national football team have around 50,000 more followers than the Czech team. Czechia, actually, we should probably update that. No longer the Czech Republic. Yeah, fair play to Albania. Great country. Love it.
I can tell you didn't watch Eurovision, so then you would have known.
I did not watch Eurovision, mate. I can't get involved in that level of politics these days. Well, it's a shame because we're going to miss out on a tiebreaker question.
We do it anyway. It must have been good. If it was a tiebreaker question.
Well, the tiebreaker question.
Double points, surely.
It's like the Christmas quiz all over again.
We're about halfway to Christmas.
Oh, God. We don't want to be.
It is football Christmas, so go on. The spirit
we'll do the tiebreaker question. To the nearest 100 million, what is the revenue projection for this year's Euros?
2.7 billion.
Steve is going with 2.7.
I have a feeling that might be right. I'll go 2.4 billion.
Sam Carp take it on the nose. 2.4 billion. Unsurprisingly bigger than the last Euros, which was hampered by several issues, including a crap format. But yeah, I mean, that's still a growth of about 500 million from France 2016, which when you consider that they are the same amount of teams, similarly developed nations, like that is a considerable step up in revenue. For those interested, that breaks down as 1.4 billion from broadcast rights, about 568 million from commercial sales. Tickets is 300 million, hospitality 100 million, and other 1.25 million. I don't know what other is, but yeah, maybe someone can get in touch and tell me.
I think that's probably also for all we've been saying about the negatives of expanding the tournament. That's probably FIFA's vindication for doing so. In that I know that's obviously budgeted revenue, but that's part of the reason that they did it, right? Is to grow the overall pool. So it's worked, you could say, in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty staggering to look at this. And this is all in our commercial guide, which is really worth checking out. But Portugal 2004, which I think of that as quite a modern UEFA tournament, only brought in 855 million euros. I mean, say only, there's still a large amount of money, but that growth in that time is pretty stunning.
That is surprising, actually. As you say, that it does feel quite modern in terms of how it's packaged as well. It doesn't feel like, that feels like there's a before and after for that one, that European Championship. That's really
I mean, like the Euro 2000, I almost lump it in with Euro 96. It almost feels like archive at this point.
Probably the best European Championship's ever been, that Euro 2000, even if you take into account his performance.
All I can remember about that is Phil Neville gifting, was it Romania a goal?
It was,
yeah. More tears before bedtime for that one.
Also, Eurodance fans, it had E-Type doing the opening ceremony with Campione, and that is a piece of
And this is why
heritage.
we bring Steve McCaskill into this podcast, for this kind of level of knowledge.
Get the revenue target wrong, but I can tell you that.
Okay, all right. We'll have a little break and then we'll come back for part 2. Right. What I asked each of you to prepare for this was one big trend or thing that you're watching about this tournament. I think we started the last round with Steve, so we'll start this one with Sam.
You've actually already nabbed mine by talking about the Volkswagen car.
I also had that,
but I'll go more granular than that. I'm watching what Hellmann's are going to do with Jack Grealish now that he has been left out of the England squad. Because I think that actually, while it's been framed as a PR disaster, and there are actually now more people who know that Hellmann's was sponsoring Jack Grealish for the Euros than probably otherwise would have known.
Are they sponsoring just Jack Grealish, or is it?
Yeah, he did a deal just for the Euros.
Amazing. What man.
I think they can kind of spin this a little bit and try and turn it into a positive. I understand that his representatives are actually also trying to figure out what happens with that deal as well now that he's not included. But, why not spin it into a positive and do something with him still? Grealish isn't someone who takes himself too seriously. He's famously patriotic, has spoken previously about how pleased he's been to be involved with England at major tournaments. He's good friends with a lot of the squad still, even though he's not there. So surely there's an opportunity for a content series, I don't know, called something like On the Flame with Jack, working title maybe, where he's in his garden having a barbecue like the rest of us back home, and, putting mayonnaise on his burger, maybe, for example, bit of Hellmann's, and just, talking about England's next game, something like that, sending a well wish to the players. It would be good for Hellmann's because it salvages that deal a little bit and still gives them some exposure around the tournament. It would also be a way of Grealish demonstrating that while he's obviously disappointed not to be included, he's not so sour that he can't kind of see the bright side of it and is still supporting England from back home. I imagine he might still need some convincing, or he might also need to be located if he's on holiday somewhere. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's an opportunity there for Hellmann's to
I've just come up with a name for this, and it's absolutely tragic, but I'm going to tell everyone anyway. Here we Mayo, which I think just ticks a lot of boxes. Funny enough, I was listening to another more successful podcast this morning, and they were actually diving into some of the content that's already been produced for this partnership, which included Laura Woods, ITV presenter, asking Jack Grealish about his dream barbecue guests, which were it was quite amusing just because it ended in a very bizarre fashion.
Now they can make that happen. They can get those dream barbecue guests.
I think a couple of them were England players. Definitely Kyle Walker was in there. John McGinn, who's actually at the Euros as well, was there.
It's not very imaginative, is it, from Grealish?
Well, wait till you hear the final one. Joining John McGinn, Kyle Walker, Jack Grealish is Zinedine Zidane.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He sort of a bit like when they just reach for the last member of their fantasy five-a-side team, or Garth Crooks has been asked to do it or something. Yeah. Just shove a big name in.
Did they all have to be footballers, or was he given the entire world to pick from?
I think it was just footballers.
Okay.
But
they could maybe they should just be looking at making this barbecue happen. Just take Grealish out there. Yeah, take Zidane out there.
If I go and pick a serious one quickly, then if you want that as well, I reckon maybe nostalgic kits would be an interesting one to keep an eye on, just based on what I was saying earlier about the end of the DFB's partnership with Adidas. Kind of that could fuel something. I know that some of the kits, I know that France's away kit produced by Nike has been inspired by the one they wore in the 1980s. Also kind of comes amid this wider backdrop. Classic football shirt. It's just got a $38.5 million investment from Chernin Group. So I know that obviously football shirt, saying that people are going to be wearing football shirts at a football tournament is not a big trend to be looking out for, but I think there is a growing trend back towards that kind of nostalgic element and historic kits and that kind of stuff. So maybe that's something to just keep an eye on whenever the cameras are panning to the stands.
Yeah, I like it. I'll be digging out my nostalgic World Cup 2022 kit that TikTok sent me. So if anyone else wants to send me kits, classic football shirts, I'll take any England kits really. I'm not sure about some of the Sven era ones. Quite like the one from 2002. Steve, what was your favourite England kit?
2006.
Is that the little cross on the shoulder?
I was going to say, we've got to be very careful talking about stylised St George's crosses, haven't we? But no one seemed to care about that one.
Yeah, it was before we went woke and ruined it for everyone. I'm joking.
There's a image of David Beckham, I think it's a World Cup qualifier against Azerbaijan in 2005, where he's got his arms out at St James's Park celebrating, and it's just... there's no finer picture in the history of world football than that, I think.
No finer picture in world football than, I don't know, say Wes Brown's debut for England.
Wes Brown's debut for England? That was Hungary 99 as well, just so you know, just for the record.
Amazing.
So
okay, apart from a potential return for Wes Brown in the England squad, Steve, what else are you looking out for at this tournament? What's your one big thing?
I mean, just continuing the theme of Von Brown, it's slightly two things, to be honest. I mean, I'm always looking at the broadcast stuff. I always have done, even since I became involved in the industry, to see what, the opening credits are like from UEFA, from the broadcasters. One thing I have spoken about this year is that there's going to be no 4K UHD at the tournament, which is really surprising given that major tournaments are usually a showcase for new broadcast innovations. So there's going to be a lot of focus on other trends. So, we've seen a lot of these cinematic cams that make it look like video games. I think there's going to be a lot of those. We're going to see a lot of stylized shots. I think it's going to be something like 47 cameras at every single game. So there's going to be some really interesting angles. So just to see how these conventions are going to be applied at the tournament. I'm also really looking forward to seeing how the official audio identity of the tournament plays out. That's one thing UEFA are better than FIFA. Official song is so much better. So again, continuing the Eurodance theme. And last time we peaked with Bono, The Edge and Garrix. And when I was, really sad at England losing that final, I was thinking, we never got to hear the orchestral version of Bono, Garrix and The Edge lifting the trophy. That Italy got that moment, and that was devastating. But the second part of it, a little bit more seriously, is, and I know our colleague Josh was talking about this, is the ball. And the official ball was fitted with sensors that can detect metrics. I think it's 500 times a second to determine when it's been kicked, and that will feed into tracking systems and what have you. And it's really interesting because at one point I always thought the future of football was going to be players would have sensors in their boots and there'd be a sensor in the ball, and you'd have a system somewhere being able to correlate all these. Technology's actually moved on to the point where you don't need it in the boots because you've got computer vision, you've got the other tracking systems, and it's going to really go and unlock, I think, just a whole load of new possibilities that, when I was growing up watching football, just wouldn't have been possible. It was video game stuff, it just seemed really impractical. So I'm going to be really interested to see if any of that filters its way into actual broadcasts and what they'll be able to tell the viewer. I mean, I find this stuff, really fascinating. I think, the future of amateur officiating can be really transformed by stuff like this. So I'd be really intrigued to see how much it would be behind the scenes, how much it would be public facing. And the ball's quite nice as well.
Yeah. Josh has done a really nice little video on this, which you can find across our socials if you want to learn a little bit more about the tracker in the ball. What I'm watching is a little bit more, I want to say serious, but I don't know. I've been a bit of a UEFA watcher on this stuff, and I'm intrigued to see how basically UEFA manages this tournament. I think they got a bit of a free pass in the last Euros, mostly blamed on the British piece, especially the stuff that happened around the final. But Euro 2016 was marked by hooliganism, like quite broadly. There was lots of running battles in Marseille, lots of problems with the Russian fans. Even in this tournament, I've already seen reports of Serbian fans apparently lining up to take on the English in their first game. It's all kind of quite depressing stuff. Unfortunately, it goes a bit hand in hand with football in Europe and globally. But it's something that UEFA has not done a great job of dealing with, whether or not that's logistics, things like hosting the Champions League final in big out-of-town stadia like they did with Istanbul, or even just the Liverpool Real Madrid fiasco in Paris. Like, it's not been something that UEFA have been able to say they've really delivered on in a good few years. I think probably this year was better organised at Wembley. I didn't hear very much about trouble there.
Well, there were 3 pitch invaders in the space of the first
one. Well, there you go.
So.
Yeah. I mean, they're almost like the friendly face of crowd trouble, aren't they? Pitch invaders. Until they go and punch Jack Grealish, that is, which...
They can't because he's not there. So
he'll be busy with his barbecue.
Yeah.
That has happened. I'm not just making up hooligans punching Jack Grealish. Birmingham derby, I believe. It comes as well against the sort of backdrop, and I don't want to take this too far into the politics of the EU. It comes against the backdrop of recent European parliamentary elections where the far right made big gains, not as big gains as perhaps were predicted, but still feels like a bit of a tinderbox potentially this tournament, and it will take a lot for UEFA to make sure it goes off smoothly.
I think what I'd say to that is, I think, with the World Cup in 2006, again, very different era, very different political environment, seemed to go off pretty well, especially compared to other tournaments at the time. German police are very well experienced in terms of policing fans, perhaps very different to other countries. I think that's really important. But I must admit, I don't think there's been such a political backdrop to a tournament in recent memory. You've got obviously the election in the UK, parliamentary elections in France that have just been announced, the European elections. So whether or not that does happen with the tournament, I certainly can't think of such a politicised backdrop to a major tournament in recent memory.
Yeah, and it's obviously already kind of infiltrated the German camp in that they've had to sort of come out and speak about a documentary that aired on ARD last week and included a poll in which quite a high percentage of respondents, 21%, basically said they'd prefer it if more white players played in the German national team again. Julian Nagelsmann, who's the coach, basically called it a shitty survey. Joshua Kimmich branded it racist. So it's been good that the German players have come out and immediately quashed that, but it's not particularly helpful for that to be being brought up on the eve of the country hosting the tournament. And I think, as Steve mentions, harking back to 2006, I think a lot of Germans look back quite fondly on that tournament. I think they refer to it as the Sommermärchen, if you have the umlaut in there, from my German GCSE lessons, which translates to summer fairy tale. So I think, and Philip Lahm, who's the tournament director and played in that tournament in 2006, has spoken about how basically they want this to emulate that and kind of be a unifying event for Germany. He's also spoken about kind of how it can exemplify Europe's values of democracy and diversity and tolerance. So yeah, there's kind of a lot riding on it. Let's see if Philip Lahm's wish comes true and that plays out. Because as you say, there's, as Steve says, there's quite a big political backdrop to all this.
Yeah, no, for sure. I did see some data. I'm not sure how reliable this is, but this could be a bit of a blessing for those German police. Is that the UK fans are least likely of the entrants this year to travel to the tournament. That doesn't mean they still won't be there in huge numbers, but I think it was the average for the other countries that have qualified is 70% of those who identified as football fans had said they were going, and in the UK it's just 50. That could be to do with the fact that, I don't know, Wales, Northern Ireland and the Republic haven't qualified. But question slightly that data, but maybe less English fans would be a bit of a boost for Germany, given that we tend to be some of the worst behaved when it comes to these tournaments.
I don't think that's entirely fair. I think that, again, just comes back to my previous point about policing and the reputation of English, historical reputation of English fans preceding them. I'm not saying there are no troublemakers, but I'm confident that the approach of the German police will prevail anyway.
No, I mean, I think that is a really good point. German police they're much better at dealing with this kind of stuff. They deal with large crowds like week in, week out in the Bundesliga in a way that's very different to the Premier League. It's a much kind of more ultra-led fan culture, and we don't really have that in this country. France obviously has a similar thing, but their police are, to be frank, terrible. Not having experienced it personally, like it's not great. But yeah, you're right. Germany is way better at dealing with it, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we won't be talking about any of these issues. Having just slandered probably half of Europe in that last section, now let's move on to the final part of this week's podcast. I've been borrowing a lot from a lot of ideas from other people's podcasts recently. In this one, I've ripped straight out of another NFL-style podcast. But rather than betting each other sandwiches, we're going to be betting each other pints in this. So the way this format is going to work is you've got to put out a suggestion, and then at the end of the tournament, we'll figure out who's won it, because whoever's got the most pints being bought for them will have succeeded. So if you can tempt us into taking you up on your gambit, then you've succeeded. The three categories that I've asked you to kind of prepare for are a winner, a breakout star, and an off-field moment. Now, this can be controversial or not. I did put controversy in my notes, so hopefully it makes it a little bit more fun. But the idea for you is to make us take your bet, but at the same time for something that could well be cashed in on. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, then go listen to the NFL podcast instead, and you'll figure it out quite quickly. Right, Sam, we'll start with you. Who is your winner? Why? And persuade us that we should bet against you.
Not that we endorse gambling on this podcast, anyway.
Well, we don't, clearly, because we're only betting for drinks here.
I always find it hard to look past France, but I think in the spirit of trying to entice you both, I think Germany might win. There's been a lot of talk around kind of their poor performances at recent major tournaments, but I just think kind of, a tournament on home turf, it's what they need at the moment. They've got quite a lot of players coming through. I think in Musiala, they've got one of the most exciting talents at the competition, and a good manager in Julian Nagelsmann, who, I don't necessarily think you need a good manager to win a national team tournament, but I think the fact that he is a good one definitely helps. So yeah, I'm going for Germany personally. I think they're gonna ride a wave, and I'm going to bet on them to win the tournament.
Yeah, I'll take you on that. I don't think that any team with counting on 2 Brighton players in which to win the tournament will do so. So as much as I'd love to be proved wrong, and I really hope that Deniz Undav fires his way to the Golden Boot, I just don't see it happening. And yeah, I'll take you up on that.
If Germany win, you'll get 2 pints, because I'd take you up on that as well. I think being die
So how does that work
Turniermannschaft
then?
will only
If
get you
Germany
so
win, you buy me a
far.
pint?
I think
Okay.
they do have a top coach in Nagelsmann, and I do think that counts for a fair bit in these tournaments. Again, I agree with you. I don't think you need to be a top coach to win a tournament, but it's definitely a marginal game. But I think they're definitely still in transition. They've got a new generation coming through. Florian Wirtz is going to be, one of the stars of the tournament, but I just don't think they've got enough. I don't think they're balanced, and they don't really have a striker. So yeah.
Oh, Undav Slounder. Steve, who's your winner? Who are you going to try and tempt us into taking you on?
I've gone for Portugal. I think they've got a really good team this time round, much better than the time they actually won it, which was a strange patchwork of players with Ronaldo cosplaying as coach in the final. And I don't think it's really been a pound for pound a better international side over the last 25 years. It's a country of about 10 million people, and they've been there or thereabouts in pretty much most tournaments since, bar one or two. I just think they've got some really good players. Bruno Fernandes, of course, leading the way from Manchester United. They revitalised Diogo Dalot as well, representing. And, you don't need to be a top manager, but I think Martinez is, I think he's had his critics, but I think he's not a bad manager at all. I think they've definitely got a shot.
Okay, a reason I'm going to take you up on that is a player you mentioned in there, and that is Cristiano Ronaldo, aka the most toxic man in world football. He will completely scupper Portugal's bid for this tournament by insisting on playing up front, despite all evidence pointing to the fact that he is a waning force and no longer really capable of occupying top-level defenders in the same way. He might be able to score a header, great. The problem when he plays with, especially with Bruno Fernandes and most of the Portugal team actually, is that they feel like they have to pass to him because it's Cristiano Ronaldo, and it hampers everything they do. I mean, he may not play as much, in which case their chances actually increase, I think. But that's the reason in which I do not think that Portugal are going to win this tournament. Sam, are you going to take Steve up on this?
I suppose I kind of have to, don't I? Because I said Germany were going to. To be honest, Portugal were another one that I considered. But yeah, why not? I'll take you up on it, whatever. France are going to win it anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, yeah, France would have been a bit of a silly pick in this because no one was going to take that. But which is why, and it's not the only reason why, England are going to win this tournament because
you don't have to tell us why. Like, we know exactly why you're picking England. It's because you're English. It's that you're a very patriotic man. I'll take you up on it, I think.
I will take you up on it just because, as a form of compensation, because if England don't win it, I get a pint.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I look forward to you both buying me. Yeah, how many pints are on this? Like, if Germany win and I've obviously do I get like 6 pints out of this or something? Is that the math? Is that right?
No, that's not how it works. You just get the ones from your bet. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we've done winners. Next is breakout stars. We'll go reverse in this one. So, Steve, who is going to be the breakout star of this tournament? I'm going to judge who the breakout star is at the end of this, by the way. Like, it's not going to be done on any kind of marketability metric or something similar.
Again, I've got my United tinted glasses on. I'm not going to go for the obvious one, but I'm going to go for Rasmus Højlund. I think he's got a good group to start with as well, to show what he can do. I do wonder how he's going to be like against England, actually, given our defence is possibly the weak spot in the English team, especially with Harry Maguire missing, and the fact that we've had to select Lewis Dunk of Brighton. He's the focal point of Denmark's attack. He will probably get more service. He's done at United, and he did actually. I think he did really well actually to how he finished the season with, let's face it, not really a lot for him going forward. So I think if he gets off to a good start in the group, he could be an outside bet for the Golden Boot.
Outside bet for the Golden Boot. Wow. Okay. All right. I mean, yeah, I'll definitely take you up on that. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the amount of pints that are coming my way. Thanks to that. Sam?
I'm going with Lamine Yamal. I don't think I really need to justify it, really. Is he the youngest player at the tournament? Potentially the youngest player at the tournament? Already pretty much on the cusp of Spain's starting 11, I believe. Tearing it up at Barcelona. Yeah, I just don't really feel like it needs explaining, to be honest. I think he's going to really make a mark on this tournament.
Yeah, I feel like I've got too many pints out on the line at the moment, so I'm feeling a bit cautious now. I'm not gonna take you up on that. Steve, what are your thoughts?
He also is a breakout star rather than Rasmus Højlund, who is kind of like how much did United pay for him?
He's a £71 million player, but then
I don't know if you could be a breakout player if someone spent 71 million on
But
him.
then your suggestion is playing for Barcelona already, so it's
Yeah, but he's 16. He's breaking out.
sounds like he's breaking out. But
Rasmus Højlund is literally.
No, I don't. I think someone like Nico Williams is a better shout. Breakout is obviously a very subjective term. You're right in that Rasmus Højlund's transfer fee means he has attracted a lot of attention. But he's not really had a platform to prove it. So far, Manchester United haven't exactly been the best. He was under radar at Atalanta before that, so it could be an opportunity to show the world what he can do.
I'm going to go for Florian Wirtz, who. Obviously, I mean, he's been talked about already in passing in this podcast, but had a big season by Leverkusen, playing for the home nation, yet to move on to like a really big club, with apologies to Bayer Leverkusen. But you feel like this could be it. If there's going to be a star in the Germany team, I feel like it's going to be him. Florian Wirtz is my tip. I feel like the next 50 most marketable, he's going to be in there.
I had Florian Wirtz on my list, but I figured that the reigning Bundesliga Player of the Year wasn't really a breakoking star.
Oh, man, we're really getting into technicalities here.
I've lost count of who owes who, what points.
You all just owe me points.
We'll figure it out at the end. This is, off-field controversy. What do you feel like is going to be the off-field controversy at this tournament?
Okay, well, I just think after all of the chat that we've given to Adidas and this censor in the football and Hisense and VAR, I think it's just going to be that. There's going to be some sort of major decision made. Technology is going to get blamed. Adidas is going to be wrapped up in it. Hisense is going to be wrapped up in it. Two sponsors roped into the biggest controversy of the tournament. I think that's where it's going to come from, in my opinion.
I like this. It's got like geopolitical elements as well. You've got China, you've got Germany.
That wasn't where I was going with it, but
well, that's where I'm going with it. I think it's a good one. I could see it. What are we saying? Denying Germany a winning goal?
No, just denying Cristiano Ronaldo another goal, probably like Adidas did at the World Cup.
Well, that's not controversial.
That was pretty controversial, I think, especially because Nike sponsored athlete, Adidas technology. But yeah, I think that's where it's going to come from.
Steve?
I don't think getting a beer at the stadium would be an issue like in Qatar. But my controversy, I think there'll be some sort of, and this is quite vague, but off-field protest will cause an issue, whether it's in one of the team camps or as part of the tournament. I think given the backdrop that we currently have and how that's manifests itself through sport in the last 12 months or so, I think it's really hard to escape in many ways that sport's been governed and events been held. So yeah, I'm expecting some sort of protest to have an impact. What that is, I'm not sure. But I don't think sport sits in isolation what's happening in society, and this is a high profile event, and also people have views they're going to share on social media. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of brings together a few things we've seen at recent tournaments, doesn't it? There was all of the One Love armband stuff going on ahead of Qatar. Germany team actually quite central to that, and their mini protest on the pitch before they went and got swiftly knocked out in the group stages.
And don't forget Euro 2020 with the rainbow imagery before games in Hungary.
Yeah, in fact they're in the same group, aren't they? Germany and Hungary. I think every chance that happens, unfortunately. My off-field controversy pick for this is a bit more light-hearted than both of yours. Mine is that there's going to be some kind of influencer-related incident that happens at this tournament. Now, we saw Salt Bay dominate the World Cup final in a way that not even really Lionel Messi could. I don't think he's going to be back anytime soon. I'm not expecting the return of Salt Bay for the trophy presentation or anything similar. But I think it's a strange time in the influencer market. There's obviously a lot of them knocking around. They have been pretty prevalent at most tournaments. Certain of them get invited into camps. Josh Denzel, for example, goes and presents Lions Den, which is a pretty big hit on YouTube. But there's also a kind of strand of influencer who feed off of controversy and try to make that part of their brand. Speed being one in particular that I can think of. I'm not sure he's going to be doing anything absolutely wild, but I feel like there's going to be something that happens with an influencer at this tournament. Don't see a brand being involved with it, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a brand that tried to take advantage of it.
Solid one.
I was just very amused at the thought of Alexander Ceferin tolerating Salt Bay. I can't imagine him actually enjoying that.
He was at the Champions League final, wasn't he?
Was he?
I'm pretty sure
God.
he was at the Champions League final. Yeah, there's
footballers just stop buying stupidly overpriced steak. Like, there's no need for Salt Bay anymore.
Yeah, he'll be back. If you get to the end of the tournament and you're worried about your controversy not coming in, then Salt Bay will pop up at the final. It's fine.
Yeah, true. Well, yeah, maybe I'll be rooting for Salt Bay at that point, begging for Salt Bay to come back.
Yeah,
in order
to salvage your pint.
Yeah, exactly, to salvage a few pints.
I'll eat at your restaurant if you salvage my pint. In fact, can the loser of this have to buy the pints from Salt Bay's restaurant? I think that's probably...
Is it shut down? I thought it had gone.
I'm not au fait with the current operation of Salt Bay's business empire.
Yeah, I've got a feeling it was struggling.
That's another podcast.
Yeah, Jadon Sancho moved back to Dortmund and could no longer travel down to go to Salt Bay's restaurant, so they were going out of business. Salt Bay, what a place to end this week's podcast. Gents, thank you very much. I actually really enjoyed that. It was nice to be back in here after a while, and I'll look forward to catching up on you, and you can all buy me some pints at the end of the tournament. Sam, Steve, thank you very much.
Cheers, Tom.
Top sheets.